My name is Alexandra Bennett, and I have been married to Ethan Bennett for 15 long years. Our life, outwardly perfect, was a facade hiding a painful truth. It was a chilly evening in November when my world began to crumble. I returned home early from a friend's art exhibition, anticipating a quiet night with Ethan and our son Nathan. But what I found was the stark opposite. I heard their voices before I saw them, Ethan's and a woman's, hushed, yet passionate. Creeping closer, I heard words that cut through my heart like a serrated knife. "Once she's out of the picture, we'll have it all, Isabel. Just a little longer." Ethan's voice slithered through the air. Isabel, his mistress, laughed, a sound so cold it could freeze blood. I can't wait to see the look on her face when she finds out. You're a genius, Ethan." Their cruel laughter echoed in the hallway, a sinister symphony that shattered my trust. I stood frozen, a statue of disbelief, as their plan to upend my life unfolded with each word. I had known about Ethan's infidelities, his late nights, the scent of foreign perfume, the lipstick stains I pretended not to see, but this was a betrayal of a different caliber. He wasn't just unfaithful, he was plotting against me, our son, our life. Stumbling back, I found myself in Nathan's room. He was my anchor, my 14-year-old, who looked so much like his father, but with a gentleness Ethan never possessed. "Mom, you're home early." Nathan's voice was tinged with surprise. "Is everything okay?" I forced a smile, my heart breaking in silence. "Everything's fine, honey. Just tired, that's all." I couldn't burden him, not yet. Not until I understood the full extent of Ethan's treachery. That night, as I lay in bed next to the man who had just vowed to dismantle my life, a plan began to take shape in my mind. Ethan thought he could discard me like an old toy, but I was not going to be a silent victim in his cruel game. The stakes were high, but I was ready to play. This was not just about me anymore, it was about Nathan, our future, and the justice we deserved. Ethan Bennett was about to learn that every action has its consequences, and I was going to be the one to teach him that lesson. Eleanor, my mother-in-law, was the unexpected ally in a house divided by secrets and lies. Despite her son's despicable nature, Eleanor's affection for me and Nathan had always been genuine. She was the first person I confided in about Ethan's betrayal. In the privacy of her quaint living room, with its floral curtains and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, I found the courage to speak. "Eleanor, Ethan is planning to leave me for another woman. He's been plotting this for a while." Her reaction was a mix of anger and sorrow. "That boy has always been selfish. But this, Alexandra, you and Nathan don't deserve this." Eleanor's empathy was a balm, but it was her next words that sparked a fire within me. "We need to protect you and Nathan. Ethan can't just get away with this." The conversation turned to action. We needed a plan, one that would expose Ethan's true colors and safeguard our future. It was a game of chess, and we were 2 moves away from checkmate. Meanwhile, Nathan's bond with his father was disintegrating. I overheard their conversation one evening, a dialogue laced with disappointment and unspoken accusations. "Why are you never home, Dad? You missed my soccer game again." Nathan's voice was a mix of hurt and accusation. Ethan's response was dismissive, his usual defense mechanism. "Business, Nathan. You'll understand when you're older. Priorities, son." But Nathan was older than his years. "Mom's always there. Are we not your priority, Dad?" The conversation ended with Ethan walking away, a cowardly retreat from a confrontation he couldn't win. Nathan's eyes, so much like his father's, yet filled with a depth Ethan never had, met mine. We didn't need words. Our resolve was unspoken. Eleanor and I continued to weave our web. We gathered evidence, bank statements, photographs, and messages. Every piece was a testament to Ethan's betrayal. Our plan was taking shape, a strategy not just for revenge, but for justice. As I tucked Nathan into bed that night, his innocent face asleep in the moonlit room, my resolve hardened. This was no longer just a battle, it was a war for our dignity, for our future. Ethan Bennett, in his arrogance, had underestimated the strength of the bonds he sought to break. He was about to learn that the ties of kinship were stronger than his web of lies. The morning I decided to confront Ethan was draped in an eerie silence. I had rehearsed this moment in my mind, but nothing could prepare me for the reality of it. He was at the kitchen table, his back to me, engrossed in his phone. Without a word, I slid the envelope across the table. It contained the irrefutable evidence of his infidelity, pictures of him with Isabel, receipts from extravagant gifts, and damning messages. Ethan's reaction was a cocktail of shock, denial, and then, disgustingly, amusement. "You've been snooping around, Alexandra? Is this some sort of joke?" His attempt to downplay his betrayal only fueled my resolve. "This is no joke, Ethan. You've been planning to leave me for Isabel. I know everything." For a moment, Ethan's facade cracked, revealing the coward beneath. "Alexandra, let's be reasonable. We can sort this out." "Sort this out?" I echoed, my voice rising. "You want to abandon your family for your mistress, and you think we can sort this out?" The room was thick with tension, a tangible force that seemed to suffocate any remnants of love we once shared. Ethan's next words were the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. "Alexandra, you're overreacting. Isabel understands me in ways you never could. I need someone younger, more vibrant." His words were a slap in the face, a confirmation of every fear and insecurity I had ever felt in our marriage. But they also ignited a fire within me, a fire of defiance and strength. "Vibrant?" I retorted, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "Is that what you call betrayal these days?" It was clear then that there was no salvaging our marriage. Ethan had made his choice, and it was not me, not us. I left the room with a newfound determination. I would not be a victim of Ethan Bennett's selfish whims. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Meetings with lawyers, discussions with Eleanor, and late-night planning sessions. We were building a case, not just for divorce, but for justice. And then came the health scare, a routine checkup that turned into a series of tests, the results of which left me reeling. Possible breast cancer? The doctor had said, her voice a blend of professional detachment and sympathy. I was stunned, my mind a chaos of fear and uncertainty. But amidst the turmoil, a plan began to take shape. A plan that would expose Ethan's true nature once and for all. "We'll tell Ethan about the diagnosis," Eleanor suggested during one of our strategy meetings. "Let's see if there's any humanity left in him." It was a gamble, but one we were willing to take. Ethan's reaction to my potential illness would be the ultimate test of his character. It was a test I was almost certain he would fail. The day we decided to reveal my diagnosis to Ethan, the air in the house was thick with anticipation. Eleanor had come over, her presence a source of strength as I prepared to face my husband. Ethan returned home late, as usual, the smell of expensive cologne and deceit clinging to him. Eleanor and I sat in the living room, the envelope containing my medical reports on the coffee table. His eyes flickered with a blend of curiosity and irritation as he walked in. "Alexandra, what's this about?" "You said it was urgent." Ethan's voice held a note of impatience. I took a deep breath, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. "Ethan, I went to the doctor last week. They suspect it might be breast cancer." The words hung in the air, heavy with the gravity of their implication. I watched Ethan closely, searching for a flicker of concern, of love. But what I saw was far more chilling. "Breast cancer? That's unfortunate," Ethan said, his voice devoid of warmth. "But what does this mean for us?" Us. The word echoed mockingly in the room. There was no us, not anymore. Eleanor's gaze was piercing, her disappointment in her son palpable. "It means, Ethan, that your wife needs you now more than ever. She needs your support." Ethan shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting between the envelope and the door. "Right, of course. We'll figure this out. I need some air." And with that, he left, his retreat as cowardly as it was revealing. His reaction, or lack thereof, was all the confirmation we needed. Eleanor's hand found mine, her grip firm. "We know what we have to do, Alexandra." The following weeks were a blur of activity. My condition worsened according to the narrative we fed Ethan. His visits were sporadic, brief, and devoid of any real concern. It was clear that his thoughts were elsewhere, with Isabel, with his escape plan. But Ethan wasn't the only one making plans. Eleanor and I, with the help of my lawyer, were meticulously crafting the trap that would strip Ethan of his power and reveal his true nature to the world. The climax of our plan came one evening when Ethan returned home to find his belongings packed in boxes, his precious possessions stripped from their usual places. "What the hell is this, Alexandra?" Ethan exploded, his composure finally cracking. "It's over, Ethan," I said, my voice steady, despite the storm raging inside me. I know about Isabel, about your plans to leave me, and I won't be a silent bystander in your little drama anymore. Ethan's face was a canvas of rage and disbelief. You can't do this to me. I'm Ethan Bennett. You're nothing without me. But he was wrong. I was Alexandra Bennett, and I was more than he would ever understand. This was my retribution, my stand against the man who had vowed to love and protect me, but had chosen betrayal instead. As Ethan stormed out, his threats and curses echoing through the empty house, I felt a sense of liberation. The facade was gone, and the truth was laid bare. Eleanor stood by my side, her presence a testament to the strength of the bonds that Ethan had tried and failed to sever. You did well, Alexandra. Now let's see this through to the end. The day of reckoning had arrived. The morning air was crisp and charged with a sense of impending justice as Eleanor and I prepared for the final act of our plan against Ethan. I sat in the lawyer's office, my fingers nervously tapping on the polished mahogany desk. Today we were to confront Ethan with the divorce papers and the full extent of his financial betrayal. The evidence was laid out neatly in folders, each document a testament to his greed and deceit. Eleanor was a rock beside me, her resolve as firm as her disapproval of her son's actions. He won't see this coming, she whispered, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. The door opened, and Ethan walked in, his usual arrogance replaced with a hint of unease. He glanced at the documents, then at us, his expression one of wary confusion. What's this about, Alexandra? Why am I here? Ethan's voice was cautious, a far cry from his usual dismissive tone. I took a deep breath, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. This is about the end, Ethan, the end of our marriage and the end of your lies. Ethan's eyes widened as he flipped through the documents, bank statements, property deeds, evidence of his financial infidelities, all laid bare for him to see. This can't be happening, he muttered, his composure slipping. You can't do this to me. Eleanor leaned forward, her gaze unwavering. You did this to yourself, Ethan. You chose betrayal over your family. Now you face the consequences. The lawyer, a stern woman with an air of unyielding authority, began to outline the terms of the divorce. The division of assets, the alimony, the child support, each point a nail in the coffin of Ethan's grand plans. Ethan's protests grew more desperate, his pleas more pathetic. You can't leave me with nothing. I'm your husband, Alexandra. We can work this out. But it was too late for negotiations, too late for remorse. There's nothing left to work out, Ethan. You made your choice. Now, I'm making mine. The meeting ended with Ethan storming out, his threats of revenge and legal battles echoing hollowly in the office. But his words held no power over me anymore. I had seen the man behind the mask, and I was no longer afraid. As we left the lawyer's office, Eleanor's hand found mine, a silent show of solidarity and strength. You're free, Alexandra. You and Nathan can start anew. And she was right. Despite the turmoil and pain, I felt a sense of liberation, a weight lifted from my shoulders. The battle was over, but the war was just beginning. Ethan Bennett would learn that the price of betrayal was high, and I would be there to ensure he paid it in full. The house felt eerily quiet after Ethan's departure, the silence a stark contrast to the years of deceit and turmoil. But in that stillness, there was a sense of emerging victory. Nathan, now aware of the full extent of his father's betrayal, was a pillar of support. Mom, we're better off without him, he said one evening as we sat in the living room, a space that once echoed with Ethan's false promises. I nodded, pride swelling in my heart for the young man my son had become. Yes, Nathan, we are. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. Ethan, stripped of his bravado, was a shadow of the man he once pretended to be. His once lavish lifestyle crumbled under the weight of the financial restrictions Eleanor and I had imposed. Then came the day of the final hearing. The courthouse was a monument to justice, its hallowed halls a fitting backdrop for Ethan's downfall. As we entered the courtroom, Ethan's eyes met mine, a mix of anger and desperation in his gaze. But I was no longer the woman he thought he could manipulate and control. The judge, a stern figure of authority, called the court to order. The proceedings were a blur, but each word from the judge was a strike against Ethan's fortress of lies. You have not only failed in your duties as a husband and father, Mr. Bennett, but you have also squandered your family's resources for selfish gains. the judge said, his voice echoing through the room. Ethan's plea for leniency fell on deaf ears. The evidence of his infidelity and financial misconduct was overwhelming. The judge's verdict was swift and unyielding. You are hereby ordered to pay substantial alimony and child support. Furthermore, your assets will be divided as per the agreed-upon terms. Ethan's face drained of color, his future as bleak as the judgment being passed. He had lost everything: his family, his reputation, and now his wealth. As we left the courtroom, Nathan's hand in mine, I felt a sense of closure. The legal battle was over, and justice had been served. Ethan's reign of deceit had come to an end, and with it, the chapter of our lives that he had tainted. We stepped out into the sunlight, the world seeming brighter, more hopeful. Nathan looked up at me, a smile on his face. Mom, we did it. We're free. Yes, we were free. Free from Ethan's lies, free from the shadows of the past. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with hope and the promise of a brighter future. Ethan Bennett had learned the hard way that the wheels of justice, though they grind slowly, grind exceedingly fine. The days following the court's decision were a time of reflection and renewal. The house, once a battleground of secrets and lies, now resonated with the promise of a new beginning. Nathan and I spent our days planning for the future, a future unmarred by Ethan's shadow. One afternoon, as the golden light of the setting sun filled the living room, Nathan turned to me, his eyes thoughtful. Mom, do you ever regret it? Marrying Dad, I mean. I paused, considering the weight of the question. No, Nathan. Despite everything, I don't regret it. Your father gave me the greatest gift, you, and through all this, I've found a strength I never knew I had. Nathan nodded, understanding reflecting in his eyes. I'm proud of you, Mom. You stood up to him, fought back. It wasn't just for me, Nathan. It was for us, for our future, I said, reaching out to squeeze his hand. In the weeks that followed, news of Ethan's downfall spread. His reputation, once that of a successful businessman, was now tarnished beyond repair. But our focus was no longer on Ethan's fate. It was on rebuilding our lives. Eleanor remained a constant presence, her support unwavering. You've both been so strong, she said one day as we shared a quiet lunch. I'm sorry Ethan couldn't be the man you deserved, Alexandra. Eleanor, you've been more than family to me, I replied, gratitude welling in my heart. You and Harrison have shown us kindness and love, more than I could have asked for. As the seasons changed, so did our lives. Nathan excelled in his studies, his resilience shining through, and I found solace in my work, my art, rediscovering passions I had long suppressed under Ethan's shadow. One evening, as Nathan and I sat on the porch watching the stars twinkle in the night sky, I felt a sense of peace. The pain of the past was fading, leaving behind lessons and newfound strength. Mom, what's next for us? Nathan asked, his voice filled with hope. Whatever we want, Nathan. We have a whole world to explore, dreams to chase. We're free to live our lives on our terms, I said, my heart full of optimism. We sat there, mother and son, looking up at the vast expanse of the night sky, our hearts light with the promise of new beginnings. The darkness of the past was behind us, and ahead lay a path illuminated by the light of our courage and love. Ethan Bennett's shadow had been lifted, and in its place was the bright dawn of our new life, a life built on truth, strength, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her son.
That's awful. Why would you do something like this? I told you earlier I don't want to live with you. Leave? You parasite wife living off Dad. Parasite? Did you really think that of me? Well, isn't it true? You can only live because Dad earns money. You can't even do household chores properly. You're nothing but a parasite. I had no energy to explain the situation to Sarah, who kept saying such horrible things. There was no need to endure and live with someone like this any longer. We can't live together, that's my line. Okay, I'll leave then. After finishing shopping, I went to change into my room clothes in the room mat, and I shared. That's when I saw something shocking. Not a single piece of my belongings was there. From clothes to bags to even a single piece of underwear, nothing at all. What does this mean? Unable to understand the situation, I stood dumbfounded, looking around the room. There were no signs of the room being ransacked, and Matt's belongings were still there, but all of mine was completely gone. Could it not be a thief? I decided to ask Sarah, who was at home during my absence. Thinking this, I knocked on Sarah's door. "What do you want?" Sarah, looking displeased, peeked a little through the door gap. "Sarah, I can't find my belongings. Do you know anything? Only my stuff is missing." "Oh, that. I took care of all of it." Sarah smiled slightly, her expression eerily creepy. "I am Jenny. I used to work in sales but quit when I got married. I met Matt, who is 8 years younger than me, through a friend. When I was 37, Matt was bright and full of topics, and we hit it off despite meeting for the first time. We started dating a few months into the relationship. Matt approached me with a serious look. "Actually, there's something I have to tell you, Jenny." "What is it? What's wrong?" "Actually, I have a daughter." It was completely unexpected. At that time, Matt was 29 years old. When I was 29, I had no romantic encounters and was focused on my work. To think that he already had a child at such an age, while shocked, I managed to ask, "Really? How old is your daughter?" "She just turned 11. "What? 11, that means she was born when I was 18. The sudden confession made my head spin. I struggled to take in Matt's words. Matt had a shotgun marriage with his high school girlfriend when he was 18. His ex-wife dropped out of college soon after enrolling, and their life with the daughter began. However, being young and wanting to enjoy life, she left him and their daughter. I'm sorry to bring this up now, but as I started thinking about a future with you, Jenny, I felt I couldn't keep this a secret any longer. Yeah, I'm honestly shocked. I understand, but I want to be with you, Jenny. I want us to be a family. That's why I had to be honest." Honestly, I was shaken by Matt's confession. Here I was, starting a new relationship at this age. Even if I didn't say it out loud, it was true that I had considered marriage. However, I hadn't realized that the person I was considering marrying was divorced and already had a child. If I broke up with Matt now, I might never get married. As I repeated Matt's words in my head, I contemplated this. "Jenny, I want to marry you. I know I've suddenly shared a lot, and it might be confusing, but I want you to think about it seriously." Matt looked at me earnestly. I was truly at a crossroads in my life. 7 years after Matt's confession, I was living with Matt and my stepdaughter, Sarah. Sarah, who wanted to become a doctor, had become a freshman in medical school. Matt often boasted about Sarah, his proud daughter. He had always been indulgent towards Sarah, perhaps out of a sense of guilt for her having grown up without a mother, but it was excessive. He bought her whatever she wanted, and Sarah grew up without learning restraint. I tried to instill proper values in her, hoping she would become a decent person. However, it seemed that my parental concern was nothing but a nuisance to her. Sarah hurled horrible insults at me. "Don't act so high and mighty just because you're old." At that moment, I felt foolish. I decided to stop doing everything for Sarah. From then on, I resolved to only do the bare minimum. One weekday, as usual, I prepared breakfast for 3 and set the table. Matt began eating as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Sarah took a bite in silence, then ostentatiously sighed. "Jenny, your cooking never improves, does it?" Hearing that, I thought to myself, not this again. Lately, Sarah's complaints about everything I do had become more noticeable. "You should try being forced to eat something this bad every day." Sarah stormed out of the living room with a huff. Matt just continued eating silently. It was as if he wasn't even listening. In such moments, Matt would not stand up for me. I had no allies, yet I didn't feel particularly distressed by the situation. There was no need for me to devote myself to someone who didn't care about me. It wasn't just bravado. I truly believed this. Sarah's lack of common sense was troubling, but there were other issues that distressed me. It was Matt's terrible spending habits. Besides indulging Sarah with whatever she wanted, Matt also loved to buy expensive items, bags, shoes, watches, anything that was considered high-end. When he ran out of money, he would come to me, begging for more. "Jenny, I need you to prepare $500 by tomorrow." Again, this is the second time this month. I've told you to get your financial sense straightened out multiple times. Shut up. This is how I relieve stress. Just get it ready. I don't intend to give you any more money. Money doesn't grow on trees. When I rebuked Matt, he guzzled down a can of beer. Someone like you who stays at home all day couldn't possibly understand the burdens of working outside. That's no way to speak. I have my own difficulties, too. Jobs have days off, but housework doesn't. Neither you nor Sarah help out with the chores. Matt slammed his hand on the table with a loud thud. The sound echoed through the living room. Shut up. A carefree housewife should just listen to her husband. Hurry up and get the money. Loudly berated, I instinctively shrank away as Matt stood up abruptly. An empty beer can thrown towards me, almost hitting my shoulder. Matt tended to become aggressive when something displeased him, especially when he had been drinking. Once, during a similar conversation, he had hit me, and since then, I had decided to avoid contradicting him as much as possible. "All right, I can't manage $500, but I'll prepare what I can, so please stop threatening me like that." "Good, you understand. Don't start opposing me from the beginning." With a snort, Matt opened a new can of beer and began drinking. Why am I still here? I had started to lose sight of the meaning of continuing as a family after being treated this way. One day, following such a life, Sarah came home early from school as her afternoon classes had been canceled. However, we didn't really spend any time together. Sarah stayed in her room and didn't come out. I remembered that the fridge was almost empty since I hadn't gone shopping. If it were just me, I could manage with takeout or store food, but it's different with a family. Feeling it was a hassle. I eventually got up. About an hour later, after shopping, I stuffed the groceries into the fridge and headed to the room I shared with Matt to change into my home clothes. Then, a shocking sight caught my eye. There was not a single piece of my belongings in the room, from clothes to bags, even down to a single piece of underwear. Nothing at all. What does this mean? Unable to understand the situation, I stood dumbfounded, looking around the room. There were no signs of the room being ransacked, and Matt's belongings were still there. But all of mine had been completely removed. It couldn't have been a thief. Could it? I decided to ask Sarah, who had been at home while I was shopping. Knocking on Sarah's door, I asked, "What do you want, Sarah?" Looking displeased, she peeked a little through the door gap. "Sarah, I can't find my belongings." "Do you know anything?" "Only my stuff is missing." "Oh, that. I took care of all of it." Sarah smiled slightly, her expression eerily creepy. "You took care of it? What do you mean?" "I don't want to live with you anymore, so I prepared everything to make it easy for you to move out." Lightly, are you telling me to leave the house? Don't put it that way. It's tiring to live with a stepdaughter you're not related to by blood, right? Think of it as a choice for both of us to be free. I couldn't comprehend Sarah's outrageous behavior, which she claimed was for my sake. Even if her argument held, she had no right to throw away someone else's belongings. There were many important things in my belongings. Where did you throw them? They're out at the back door. I've called the waste collectors, so if they haven't come yet, you might still find them there. In a panic, I rushed out to the back door. Fortunately, the waste collectors hadn't arrived yet, and my belongings were piled up in several trash bags. I retrieved them and visited Sarah again. "That's awful. Why would you do something like this? I told you earlier I don't want to live with you." "Leave? You parasite wife living off dad." "Parasite? Did you really think that of me?" "Well, isn't it true? You can only live because dad earns money. You can't even do household chores properly. You're nothing but a parasite." I had no energy to explain the situation to Sarah, who kept saying such horrible things. There was no need to endure and live with someone like this any longer. We can't live together. That's my line. Sigh. Okay, I'll leave then. Hearing my words, Sarah's face brightened instantly. Yay, honestly, I thought you would make more of a fuss, but I'm glad you accepted it so easily. Serves you right, old lady. I had endured because we were family, but it had finally become ridiculous. Staying with these people was just a waste of time. Fortunately or unfortunately, thanks to Sarah, I was spared the trouble of packing up. I decided to leave the house that very day. After leaving, I received no contact from Matt. Normally, one would expect at least a phone call, but the lack of communication was evidence that Matt had no intention of repairing our relationship. I also did not contact Matt or Sarah. I was savoring the happiness of being able to use my time solely for myself. Since my parents' home was far away and I was not yet divorced, it wasn't realistic to return there with all my belongings. So I rented a short-stay apartment near the nearest station and was living there. About 6 months after leaving, my smartphone alerted me to an incoming call. Sarah's name appeared on the display. I ignored it at first, but she kept calling over and over, so I finally gave in and answered the phone. What do you want? You keep calling. It's annoying. Finally, stop ignoring me. Suddenly, a scream, like a piercing voice, came through. I instinctively pulled the smartphone away from my ear. You don't have to yell, I can hear you. You've never contacted me before, so what do you want now? It's something serious. Today the university told me that my tuition hasn't been paid. They said I can't advance to the next year if it isn't paid by the deadline. Why haven't you handled it? Why don't you ask your dad about that? He's always busy with work during the weekdays, so it's your job to handle such matters. It's your role to take care of the money he gives and make the transfer. It's terrible that you're causing me trouble by not doing what you should. Even in this situation, it seemed Matt hadn't told Sarah the truth. Utterly dismayed, I decided to tell her the truth. Look, the person who was paying your tuition wasn't your dad. Huh? What do you mean? I was the one paying it, but after everything that happened, and since we're not living together anymore, I have no obligation to spend money on you. I don't plan to pay anymore, so just so you know. Hearing my words, Sarah was silent for a while, but then burst out laughing. What a thing to say! As if a housewife like you could afford medical school tuition. You must be making excuses for misusing the money you got from Dad. It's pathetic. You can think what you want. If you really believe Matt is paying your tuition, tell him to make the payment right away. You can make bank transfers online these days, you know. Are you still saying that? You'll just embarrass yourself with such a blatant lie. I wouldn't mind forgiving you if you just admit it now. The audacity to take such a tone when her advancement is at stake is astonishing. It's the epitome of shamelessness. You're free to say what you want, but I'm only telling you the truth. Shameless woman. I'll check with Dad then. Good riddance to a wicked woman like you. After saying her piece, Sarah abruptly hung up the phone. Would Matt tell his daughter the truth? I didn't care what became of those two heartless people, but dealing with them was a hassle. One day, while staring at my computer screen, Sarah called again. It had been about 2 weeks since our last conversation. Dad really hasn't been paying the tuition. Well, of course. I was the one who actually paid. Maybe he wanted to impress his daughter. But you were a housewife. How could you pay for medical school tuition? I'm not just a housewife, I replied. Sarah gasped for a moment. Then in a small voice she muttered, What? I've told you before I work from home. That's a lie. I never heard that, Sarah continued. You just did. Listen, or maybe you thought what I say isn't worth listening to. That's absolutely a lie. You just forgot to say it. As Sarah struggled with her excuses, I continued the conversation. I'm a programmer. I can work just with a computer, and I used to work at an IT company before we got married. I have plenty of job requests. Programming? That job requires special knowledge, doesn't it? If you're going to make up something, at least come up with a better lie. I told you I worked at a knit company. I was in sales, so I had to know some basic knowledge, and I didn't start from nothing. It turns out I'm quite suited for this meticulous input work. I'm actually pretty good at it. No way. I thought you were just a parasite living off Dad's income. That's your dad's story. Matt spends all his salary and hardly contributes anything to the living expenses. Sarah's shocked expression was visible. It must be shocking to be confronted with the fact that everything she believed was a lie. I've been the one paying for your tuition, groceries, utilities, and all other living expenses. You mean Dad hasn't been putting any money into the house? Then what does he spend his earnings on? I don't know what he spends it on. He never tells me, but it's definitely all for himself. Even so, I haven't heard from Matt at all. How are you managing to live? How are we managing? It's been the same as before you left. You might want to check on that. If Matt continues spending money the same way, he'll go bankrupt soon, don't you think? You'll lose the luxury of attending university. No way, Sarah muttered quietly, then hung up the phone. Was it too harsh to have such a conversation with a daughter, even if she is my stepdaughter? I stopped myself from feeling any pity. Sarah is 18. She is an adult. She needs to rethink her way of considering only herself, even if it means hurting others. I turned back to my computer and resumed work. A few days after telling Sarah the truth, Matt called me. It had been over 6 months since I left the house, and this was the first time he had contacted me. What did you tell Sarah? What do you mean, what did I tell her? I just told her the truth, that I was the one paying for all our living expenses. You shouldn't have said that. Now Sarah is calling me a liar. She won't even talk to me properly. It's all your fault. His selfishness left me only able to sigh. The real issue is your reckless spending. You had me pay all the living expenses, and when you ran out of money for fun, you'd ask me for more. How can you even say such things? Shut up. It's the wife's duty to support her husband who works outside. Who's being arrogant now? Talk to me about duties when you've contributed even a penny to our living expenses. You have no right to speak when you only spend money on your own entertainment. Is that all you wanted to say? I'm hanging up now. It's a waste of my time. Wait. His tone suddenly changed to one of panic. Since you left, I've been struggling because there's no money for living expenses. I'll forgive you if you apologize now, so come back home. I was speechless at his continued arrogance, even in desperation. In the end, he only thought about himself. As I stayed silent, Matt kept talking. I can't maintain the same lifestyle with my earnings alone. I've taken on debts, but I have no way to pay them back. If you come back, everything will be as it was. You must be lonely on your own, too. You really have some nerve. You earn a decent salary after all, yet you're still in debt. Are you still wasting money? I have my own reasons. I can't just change my spending habits overnight, right? You need to show off to keep the girls at the nightclubs from running away. Matt's reaction was more clueless than I expected, and I almost burst out laughing. It must have been unexpected for him. He thought he had hidden it well. I know about you frequenting nightclubs and how smitten you are with one of the girls there. You've been telling her you'll lavish her with a luxurious life once we're divorced. How? How did you know about that? I have business dealings with your company. One of your colleagues who is in charge told me. There's been gossip about your affairs, and he thought it would be prudent to inform me. Damn it, who spilled that? I got curious, so I hired a detective to investigate. The evidence just kept piling up. Fine dining, buying her designer bags and jewelry. It's no wonder your salary vanishes if you spend like that. Matt fell silent. He probably never thought I would find out, and that it would become a topic of gossip in his workplace. It was sloppy of him. I hear there's also gossip about your previous wife. What do you mean? The reason for your divorce. You told me she left because she wanted to play around, but the rumor is it was due to your infidelity. What? That rumor has spread too. That reaction, should I take it as confirmation that the rumor is true? Well, I don't have proof and I don't know the truth, but I can't trust anything about you anymore. Please, let's get a divorce. Matt kept ranting about not accepting a divorce and wanting me to come back, but he never apologized. Even if he apologized now, there's no way I'd return to that house. But I was thoroughly disappointed with his selfishness. When I mentioned taking it to court if he continued to resist, he finally conceded to the divorce. Now I can truly be free. I felt relieved. I was officially able to divorce Matt. The lawyer I hired was very competent and went out of his way to make sure Matt really felt the consequences as I wanted. Matt's spending and abuse, along with Sarah's harsh words, were all documented, and based on that, I demanded compensation. I requested a lump sum payment to avoid any future dealings, and he paid it all. The lawyer even spoke to the girl Matt was involved with, negotiating not to sue her if she told the truth. Asking her what happened between them, she confessed everything about the years Matt spent lavishly on her that led to Matt being banned from the nightclub, and he could no longer meet the girl he had been supporting so generously. However, his poor financial habits did not improve, and he continued to accumulate debt, which has now reached an unmanageable amount. As for Sarah, Matt couldn't afford her college fees, and she had to drop out of the university she had just entered. She's been trying to find a job to pay off the debts, but due to her pride in wanting to become a doctor, she looks down on many jobs and has been repeatedly rejected. If they had cherished their family, they could have continued to live a stable life, but now it serves them right. As for me, I'm enjoying a life where I can freely spend my time and money on myself. Though I'm not very materialistic, I do enjoy sipping good wine the night before a day off or eating out at nice restaurants. Now I'm planning a solo trip abroad. If I ever find a partner in the future, I hope it will be someone who can cherish each other. Thinking about this, I enjoy my life alone. I don't believe marriage should be about money, but there are individuals who prioritize wealth above all else. My sister-in-law, Selena, happened to be one of them. Never did I imagine that greed would rear its head over an inheritance after my brother, a respected surgeon, passed away. I'm Mary Smith, the manager of a jewelry store, content with my single life at 31. Yet with my boyfriend's recent proposal, I'm considering taking the plunge into marriage. As our families gather tomorrow to celebrate our engagement, tensions simmer beneath the surface. My older brother Tyler, a prominent surgeon in Tokyo, has always been both a protector and a mentor due to our age gap. Upon hearing of my impending nuptials, he jests about vetting potential suitors as if he were my father, earning a chuckle from me. But beneath his teasing lies a hint of concern. Tyler's own marriage to Selena, a woman of stunning beauty but questionable values, exemplifies the clash between appearance and substance. Despite their glamorous facade, Selena's materialistic tendencies strain familial bonds. Her penchant for luxury often takes precedence over commitments, leaving us disappointed and frustrated. Initially, we excused Selena's behavior, attributing it to the pressures of her looks. Yet, as her disregard for family gatherings grows, tolerance wanes. Her last-minute cancellation of tomorrow's meeting, swapping it for afternoon tea at a renowned hotel, epitomizes her selfishness. While her absence wouldn't trouble us, it's her lack of consideration that irks me the most. I refuse to be at her beck and call forever, accommodating her whims. I attempted to confide in my brother, but his soft spot for Selena hindered any meaningful congress. He apologized for the inconvenience and assured me he would address her behavior. What irks me most isn't just Selena's selfishness, but also how she manipulates my busy brother into apologizing for her, running errands, and relaying messages on her behalf despite being a full-time housewife. Selena avoids household chores by hiring cleaners and opts for dining out, her schedule revolving around acquiring branded goods, leaving little room for genuine responsibilities. The next day's family meeting proceeded smoothly, with my boyfriend securing everyone's approval. It seemed like a pleasant affair, albeit short-lived. However, that evening, as I was winding down from the day's events, Selena's unexpected call shattered the peace. She erupted into a tirade, demanding scones and macarons while berating me for my supposed negligence. Confused, I attempted to reason with her, only to be met with more screeching. Despite my attempts to clarify, Selena persisted in her demands, oblivious to reason. Her insistence on a souvenir from the hotel, coupled with her unreasonable expectations, left me bewildered and drained. What began as a celebratory evening ended in exhaustion and frustration thanks to Selena's unreasonable demands and tantrums. I pondered whether Tyler could possibly find solace in his daily routine amid Selena's turbulent emotional fluctuations. What drove him to marry her in the first place? While her external charm was undeniable, her inward self-centeredness left much to be desired. I couldn't help but wonder if her upbringing had indulged her due to her looks. My concern for Tyler lingered, yet I knew better than to meddle in his marital affairs. It was his choice after all, and he had always supported my decisions as well. The following day, while attending to customers at the jewelry store, I spotted Selena outside, arm in arm with a man roughly her age, likely in his late 20s. Their cozy chatter as they entered the store caught my attention, and I hesitated before approaching them. Selena's nonchalant attitude towards our encounter only added to my discomfort. When I inquired about her companion, she dismissed him as an old acquaintance from her modeling days. Still, the sight of them together, especially considering her marital status, left me puzzled and uneasy. As Selena perused the jewelry, she brazenly inquired about employee discounts, oblivious to the impropriety of her behavior. Unwilling to entertain her audacity, I politely informed her that such discounts weren't available. In truth, I couldn't stomach the thought of her companion purchasing items for her. Despite her slight annoyance at the revelation, Selena made her selections and departed, leaving her companion to settle the bill. Their dynamic left me questioning the nature of their relationship. In the evening, I mustered the courage to share my observations with Tyler. However, his somber mood indicated that something troubled him deeply. "Tyler, what's wrong?" I asked, sensing his distress. I had a nagging feeling about Selena, but I chose not to confide in Tyler. When I broached the topic of my upcoming wedding, he seemed preoccupied with his own plans. He mentioned saving for our wedding next year and invited me without a clear response regarding Selena's involvement. His indecision left me wondering. Despite my attempt to share wedding details, Tyler remained non-committal. His abrupt departure from the call, coupled with his vague invitation to meet at our parents' house, left me puzzled. Perhaps he wasn't feeling well. Tyler, a dedicated surgeon, often prioritizes others' well-being over his own. Tyler's tendency to downplay his own health concerns worried me despite his laughter at the occupational hazards of his profession. I couldn't shake the feeling that his relentless schedule was taking a toll on him. I doubted Selena's ability to provide the support he needed, given her self-centered nature. A subsequent email from Tyler outlined the gathering schedule at our parents' house. When I arrived, I was alarmed by his deteriorating complexion, worse than I had ever seen. Concerned, I inquired about his well-being, only to receive vague reassurances about work keeping him busy. Finally, I mustered the courage to voice my concerns about Selena's recent behavior. I recounted her appearance at my store with a young man, questioning if Tyler was being deceived once again. Selena's history of infidelity had long been a concern of mine, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. "I've been too caught up with work to give her much attention," my brother admitted, but our parents were incensed. Her absence at the gathering provided the perfect opportunity for me to broach the subject. When I questioned Tyler about Selena's well-being, he responded solemnly, "Selena isn't here today, which is why I asked you all to come." "I have a favor to ask." With a grave expression, Tyler disclosed something shocking. Despite our disbelief, his stance remained unwavering, leaving us stunned. 3 months later, tragedy struck as my brother succumbed to stomach cancer, a consequence of relentless stress and overwork. It was a bitter realization. Despite his dedication to saving lives, he neglected his own health. Even amidst his suffering, Tyler had recognized the signs, undergoing a grueling examination that revealed his illness. Regret lingered as we wished he had confided in us sooner. Tears flowed freely at his funeral, a profound sense of helplessness enveloping us. Fond memories of Tyler flooded my mind, the steadfast support he provided during my childhood struggles and setbacks. His premature departure before reaching the age of 40 left us grappling with sorrow and uncertainty. Yet amidst our grief, Selena's behavior stood out starkly. Clad in the ostentatious necklace purchased from my store, a gift from another man. She showed no regard for the solemn occasion. Her callous display was unforgivable, a painful reminder of her self-serving nature. Transforming my sorrow into fury, I confronted Selena, unable to comprehend her audacity. "Why are you wearing that?" I demanded, my voice trembling with anger. "Don't you understand how much my brother cherished you?" Selena, seemingly unfazed, met my accusation with a disingenuous smile. "Of course I know," she retorted casually. "It's just the way things are in this world. If you're unhappy, why did you marry me?" Her callous words cut deep, and I struggled to contain my indignation in front of my brother, our parents, and the other mourners. Beneath Selena's selfish facade, her disregard for my brother's memory was painfully evident. Even as I longed for her to face consequences, she callously continued, lamenting the end of their relationship, her cavalier attitude towards marriage, and her anticipation of inheritance, leaving me seething with rage. Before I could restrain myself, my hand moved instinctively to slap her, but it was intercepted by a man at her side. As I registered his presence, he introduced himself as a nurse who had worked with Tyler, sent to protect me at his behest. Confusion clouded my thoughts as I struggled to comprehend the situation amidst the solemnity of the funeral. Laughter rang out from the gathered nurses and doctors, colleagues of my late brother. Despite my anguish, their camaraderie provided a fleeting sense of comfort amidst the turmoil. I turned to the man who intervened during the nurses' laughter, seeking clarity amidst the confusion. His response was blunt. "Did the doctor leave any inheritance behind? Your family should know." His words struck a chord. I knew the truth all too well. My brother hadn't left a single yen of his inheritance. Yet Selena, unaware of this fact, spiraled into hysteria, accusations flying as she accused us of plotting to deceive her and seize the money for ourselves. With fervor, she awaited the revelation of Tyler's wealth, confident in her impending windfall. As Selena's tirade reached a fever pitch, the nurse's amusement turned to outright hysteria. Sensing the need to intervene, my father stepped forward, his voice calm yet firm. "Do you truly not know?" he inquired, impatient for answers. Selena demanded an explanation. Reluctantly, I obliged, revealing my brother's financial arrangements made during his lifetime. He had generously set aside 10 million yen for my wedding fund, among other gifts. As the truth sunk in, Selena's complexion shifted from blue to white. My brother, though revered for his expertise, had a penchant for extravagant spending to alleviate stress. Lavish parties, exclusive dinners, and luxury accommodations strained his resources, all in a bid to find solace amidst his demanding career and familial obligations. Despite his generosity and desire to share these experiences with Selina, she remained conspicuously absent during his trials and triumphs. It wasn't Selina by his side during difficult moments. It was his colleagues and friends, the very individuals now gathered to bid him farewell. The nurses, their laughter subsided, shared heartfelt memories of my brother's kindness and generosity. Despite his demanding schedule, he made time to care for them, inviting them to parties that left a lasting impression. Their admiration for him only deepened, inspiring them to work harder in their own endeavors. As they spoke, I learned of my brother's final act of benevolence. He had donated the remainder of his estate to the hospital. Representatives from the General Hospital, grateful for his contribution, bid him farewell. Their yearly struggles with research funding would be alleviated, ensuring better medical care for the future. Witnessing the extent of my brother's compassion toward others, I couldn't help but feel a pang of disappointment towards Selina. While he had touched so many lives, she, who should have been closest to him, exhibited selfishness and greed. Months later, Selina contacted me, her tone demanding as she sought to secure her inheritance. However, her careless handling of the estate revealed a shocking truth. Despite my brother's substantial earnings, his assets had been depleted. In her pursuit of the mansion and other assets, Selina had overlooked Tyler's debts, leaving her with a fraction of what she had anticipated. Her plea for assistance fell on deaf ears as I reminded her that our familial ties had dissolved with Tyler's passing. Her actions spoke volumes. Despite claiming to care for my brother, her true motives had been laid bare. "I'll help you out of trouble, but how can you expect that after being so selfish until now?" I retorted to Selina. Her impatience was evident in her voice as she grappled with the sudden reality of inheriting both the mansion and debts. Inheritance includes liabilities, I reminded her coldly, informing her that renouncing the inheritance was an option within 3 months of being informed. Suggestions that she sell the luxury items she had collected only elicited tears and pleas for forgiveness from Selina, but I couldn't bring myself to console her. Despite her remorse, I ended the call, unable to reconcile her actions with my brother's memory. With my brother's passing, my wedding was postponed by a year. My husband and in-laws, noticing my lingering depression, offered understanding and support. Determined not to disappoint my late brother, I vowed to live a life of gratitude, helping those who had stood by me. At the wedding, my brother's popularity became evident as colleagues paid their respects at his grave. Learning of his generosity towards his coworkers, I feared his kindness might be exploited, yet the genuine outpouring of support proved otherwise. Meanwhile, rumors of Selina's downfall circulated within the jewelry industry. Her extravagant spending habits and questionable relationships painted a stark contrast to my brother's generosity. Forced to sell her mansion, she now ekes out a living in humble accommodations, burdened by mounting debts. Reflecting on Selina's misfortunes, I couldn't help but feel vindicated in my belief that marrying for money was wrong. I vowed to honor my brother's memory by protecting his legacy, just as he had always protected me.
People like you with no job and a limited education are not welcome in this household. With those words, my mother-in-law poured scalding water on me. "It's hot, please stop." I involuntarily screamed, shocked by her bizarre behavior. Pouring boiling water on anyone is inexcusable. Fortunately, I suffered no burns, but it could have been a disaster. I couldn't believe my mother-in-law would resort to such extremes. Moreover, it wasn't me but my husband who was unemployed. A growing anger towards my mother-in-law's attitude surged within me. Enough is enough. If she's gone this far, I'll do as she wishes. Understood. If you insist, I have no choice. I'll leave this house, I declared. Finally, you're leaving. That makes things easier for me. My mother-in-law expressed joy. Far from being remorseful, I no longer wanted to stay in such a hostile environment. I promptly packed my things and returned to my parents' home. My mother-in-law didn't know that my husband, Raffle, was unemployed or that I had been supporting the household finances. In fact, since quitting my job, I had started trading stocks and was earning about $30,000 a month. Even if I was driven out of her house, I could still live on my own without any issues. I wouldn't have any qualms about being on my own. Even as she came to me in tears, struggling with living expenses, I would never lend a hand. She should regret kicking me out like this. I married Raffle about 2 years ago. We were from the same university and have been dating since then. Both of us graduates of the economics department, aspired to work in finance and managed to secure jobs at different brokerage companies after graduation. Despite our busy days, we maintained our relationship. 3 years later, Raffle proposed. "Julia, I will definitely make you happy. Marry me." Believing that I could be happy with Raffle, I accepted. "Yes, I'm looking forward to it," I replied. We decided to get married, thinking we could build a happy family together. However, Raffle then dropped an unexpected bomb. "Hey Julia, would you quit your job and live with me at my parents' house?" "What? I don't mind quitting my job, but we're newlyweds. I'd like to live with just the two of us. I'm just worried about leaving my mother alone. I'll make sure it won't be a burden to you," Raffle explained. Raffle's father had passed away when he was in middle school, and since then he had lived with his mother. Being an only child, Raffle was concerned about her. Understanding his feelings, I agreed. "Okay, I'll live with you." 2 weeks later, we moved into Raffle's family home. My mother-in-law, now able to live with Raffle, initially greeted us with a pleased expression. However, as soon as she looked at me, her expression clouded. She stared at me coldly, making it painfully clear that I was not welcomed. "It doesn't matter. You didn't have to come here," she muttered under her breath. I smiled and brushed it off, but at this point, I began to feel a bit anxious about living with her. However, the day passed without any particular issues. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my mother-in-law yelling at me. "Are you still sleeping? Hurry up and prepare breakfast." When I looked at the clock, it was still before dawn, around 4:00 a.m., and it was still dark outside. I was surprised that she would demand breakfast so early. "Why so early? It's still dark outside," I said. "Don't just lay around because you're not working," my mother-in-law scolded me, still groggy from sleep. I thought it was way too early in the morning, but I couldn't argue back and started preparing breakfast. Even while preparing breakfast, my mother-in-law kept berating me. "Hurry up! Why does it take you so long? You're so slow." After 30 minutes, breakfast was finally ready. "I'm sorry for making you wait," I said. "You finally finished? Can't you make it faster?" My mother-in-law complained again. I wanted to retort that it was physically impossible to do it any faster, but I just smiled and shrugged it off. "What is this? This soup is too salty." "What is it?" "I don't think it's that salty." "What are you saying? There's something wrong with my taste. Are you trying to kill me quickly by feeding me such salty meals?" "I never thought or intended such a thing," I replied. I was overwhelmed by my mother-in-law's pressure and couldn't talk back. Finish eating, start cleaning. After that, there's laundry to do, so there's no time to rest. Since then, every day, I was continually harassed by my mother-in-law, wearing me down both mentally and physically. While I was cleaning, she would say things like, "You missed the dust in the corner." When I was doing laundry, she'd complain, "There's still a stain." A month after starting to live with her, I felt like I was going to break, so I talked to Raffle about it. "It's about your mother. She's been saying mean things to me every day, and it's hard. Could you please tell her not to say such things?" But Raffle showed no reaction. I was momentarily irritated by Raffle's lack of response, but then I noticed something strange about him. He was pale, as if he had something important to say. "What's wrong? Did something happen?" I asked. Hesitantly, Raffle began to speak. "Actually, I've been fired from the company." "What is this? Some kind of joke?" I was speechless, unable to comprehend. There was a downsizing at the company, and I got laid off, Raffle explained. According to Raffle, due to recent economic downturns, the company's profits had plummeted, leading to unavoidable large-scale layoffs. So you'll be unemployed from tomorrow. Well, I can work for 1 more month after receiving the notice of dismissal, but after that. Fortunately, I had been using my knowledge from my time at the securities company to trade stocks. Although I struggled at first, I was now earning about $30,000 a month, so we weren't struggling financially. I was comforting Raffle and had forgotten about all the harassment from my mother-in-law. From the next day onwards, I endured my mother-in-law's harsh treatments as Raffle lost his job. Feeling the need to be strong and support him, I continued to endure the situation. A month passed, and Raffle was officially laid off and became unemployed. He started looking for a job initially, but gradually he began to spend most of his time at home, making excuses. Shouldn't you start looking for a job more seriously? I suggested. Yeah, I'm looking, but it's hard to find a good company that will suit me, Raffle replied, seemingly having no intention of actively seeking new employment. Reluctantly, I continued to support our household. As time passed, the harassment from my mother-in-law intensified, and I grew increasingly exhausted. Initially, I thought I had to endure it because Raffle was unemployed, but I no longer felt that way. I spent my days feeling listless. One day, Raffle unusually went out in the morning. Perhaps he had finally started to seriously look for a job. After seeing him off, I started cleaning as usual. Make sure it's clean. Do it properly. My mother-in-law sipped coffee on the living room sofa, hurling sarcasm at me. Ignoring her, I continued cleaning. Suddenly, she threw a tantrum and yelled at me. How dare you ignore me? You're just a mere daughter-in-law. You don't even have a job. Ignoring her, I continued cleaning. She grew angrier and confronted me. Still ignoring me? Unemployed and uneducated people like you should leave this house. With those words, she poured boiling water on me, the hot water she had prepared for her coffee. It's hot. Please stop. I screamed involuntarily at her sudden action. Thankfully, the water wasn't super boiling hot, so I didn't suffer any burns, but it could have been a disaster. Finally, Emily reacting, she said, "This is what I've been saying. If you're not working, leave this house," she smirked as she spoke. Fed up with her behavior, I had no choice but to agree to her demand. All right, I'll leave. Good, that makes things easier. Leave quickly, she ordered. I quickly packed my things and decided to leave that day. I no longer wanted to spend another second in that house. I left, heading straight to my parents' home. Upon arrival, my parents were surprised by the sudden visit, but welcomed me warmly. I waited for a call from Raffle, but there was neither a phone call nor a message. Feeling a bit lonely, I decided not to contact him until he reached out. A month passed since I returned to my parents' house, but there was still no contact from Raffle. My feelings for him faded, and I started considering divorce. One early morning, the doorbell at my parents' house rang. On the monitor, I saw, to my surprise, Raffle and my mother-in-law. What now, after all this time? I thought. Yes, what can I do for you? I've forgiven you now. Come back home quickly, she yelled through the intercom. As usual, forgive me? What's she talking about? I appreciated her words, but I hadn't done anything that required forgiveness from her. After telling her that, I ended the intercom call. Boiling with anger at my mother-in-law's attitude, however, they were persistent, banging on the front door violently. Don't just hang up on me, come on, let us in, my mother-in-law yelled. Considering the noise they were making could become a hassle to the neighborhood, I reluctantly opened the door, inviting my mother-in-law and Raffle inside. After seating them on the sofa in the living room, I inquired about their unexpected visit, wondering why they were both there all of a sudden. It was my mother-in-law who had insisted that I leave, and now she was telling me to come back. The situation was perplexing, and I couldn't make any sense of it. You're the one who told me to leave. There's no way I can go back now, I asserted. My mother-in-law responded with frustration, accusing me of childish behavior and claiming to have forgiven me. She insisted that I return and stay in her house, even stating that she'd let me, an unemployed and uneducated person, stay there. But I'm not the unemployed one, it's Raffle. And if I go back, they'll take advantage of me every day. I might not be working, but what about your son, huh? I retorted. Raffle seemed surprised at this revelation. My mother-in-law appeared confused, indicating that Raffle hadn't informed her about his layoff. Pressed further, Raffle finally admitted to being laid off from the company. Apologies and explanations ensued, with Raffle justifying his actions by relying on my income for financial stability. My mother-in-law, shocked at the news, openly expressed anger toward Raffle for not finding a job yet. Why did you keep quiet about this? What are we going to do now? She scolded him. Raffle assured her that my income would suffice for the time being, causing my mother-in-law to label him as worthless for not actively seeking employment. Fed up with Raffle's excuses, I couldn't believe that I had ever thought of supporting him. When my mother-in-law suggested I come back, I vehemently rejected the idea, considering all the mistreatment I had endured. Their unexpected visit had turned into a heated argument, revealing the truth about my mother-in-law pouring boiling water on me. Raffle was shocked to learn about this incident and confronted his mother. Why did you do that? He asked her. She admitted to the act, attributing it to my ignoring her. The revelation sparked a heated exchange between Raffle and his mother, prompting me to intervene and urge them to take their arguments home. Realizing the impact of their loud arguments on someone else's house, my words prompted a change in their attitudes. Previously assertive and bold, they now pleaded with me to come back, promising that they wouldn't cause any harm again. Despite their pleas, I saw through their intentions. Raffle's promise to find a job seems insincere, and my mother-in-law's assurance not to cause trouble appeared dubious. I voiced my skepticism, stating that their words were pointless and that they would only take advantage of me. Their silence confirmed my suspicions, and I left them in the living room, heading to my room, leaving them to contemplate their actions. When I returned to the living room 5 minutes later, they were still sitting in silence, with their heads down. Frustrated by the prolonged silence, I questioned, "How long do you plan to stay quiet? It doesn't matter to me anymore." Instead of a response, Raffle signed something. I had handed him a pre-filled divorce form with my name on it. Surprised by the document, Raffle looked utterly confused. I bluntly explained, "Can't you see? It's a divorce form. I'm done with someone who won't find a job and didn't even contact me after I went back to my parents' house. Don't wait, please. This is too sudden," Raffle protested. I found his stubbornness irritating, as he seemed oblivious to the fact that his actions were the root cause of our problems. Unmoved, I affirmed, "I've made up my mind. My decision to divorce you won't change, no matter what you say." Raffle, still in disbelief, questioned if divorce was too harsh. Coldly, I responded, "I don't think so. It's your fault." I directed the same coldness toward my mother-in-law, who was partly to blame. Resigned to the situation, Raffle signed the divorce form, warning me not to regret it. However, I felt a sense of relief, and I asserted that the one who might regret it was Raffle. "I'll submit the divorce form. I don't want any compensation. Just go home," I declared, finalizing my divorce from Raffle. Though it may have seemed harsh, it was necessary to escape the harassment from my mother-in-law and Raffle's unemployment. 2 weeks later, while relaxing at my parents' house, I received a call from my ex-mother-in-law. She informed me that the electricity and gas had been cut off and questioned if I had done something. I explained that I had stopped paying for Raffle and her living expenses. Hoping for my assistance, she asked if I could cover it just for the month. I found her request absurd, considering we were no longer a couple and didn't live together. I firmly declined, suggesting she asked Raffle for help, as he had promised to find a job. Unable to comprehend my refusal, she pleaded for help, playing the ex-wife card. However, I remained firm, ending the call and blocking her number. Finally, I severed ties with both my ex-mother-in-law, who constantly harassed me, and Raffle, who had proven to be unreliable. Life at my parents' house became peaceful, and I focused on rebuilding my life. Months later, while checking stock charts on holiday, I received a message from Raffle. He apologized for everything, acknowledging his reliance on me and the recent job at a factory. Despite the apology, I had no intention of getting involved with them again. Raffle mentioned his mother's continued harshness and expressed a desire for me to come back. Reading the message, I believed reconciliation was unlikely. I blocked Raffle's number. 6 months after the divorce, I started dating a man introduced by a friend. He was reliable, treated me well, and despite the age difference, we connected. While marriage was not on the immediate horizon, I cherished the happy times we spent together, focusing on the present and leaving the past behind.
My name is Emily, and at 26, I'm a driven career woman. Currently, I share a home with my husband, John. Lately, I've been contemplating starting a family soon, but John believes we should first focus on building a house and settling down before considering children. Therefore, we're diligently saving money for our future home. Despite my desire to start a family promptly, John remains adamant about his stance. Whenever I broach the topic of children, he reiterates the need to establish our home first. It's disheartening how he disregards my perspective. I resign myself to the idea that I must work harder to contribute to our savings. John and I have been married for a year now, and I've noticed a pattern in our relationship. He rarely considers my opinions, a trait that persisted from our dating days. Initially, I admired his strong convictions, but in marriage, mutual respect for each other's viewpoints is essential. I fear our marriage is faltering, especially with the influence of his parents, who live just a short drive away. John frequently visits his parents, citing reasons like cutting down on expenses. However, I've discovered he indulges in drinks with his co-workers, conveniently omitting these expenses from his frugal calculations. It's perplexing how stringent he is with me about saving yet being lenient with himself. His frugality extends to trivial matters like conserving hot water and turning off lights prematurely, directives he imposes solely on me. If only he extended the same standards to himself, perhaps our relationship wouldn't feel so one-sided. I would be seething with anger. However, he seems to believe it's acceptable to impose his ideas on others. Every week when we visit his parents' house, a new problem surfaces. Hasn't it been a year since you got married? We want some good news soon. We'll be able to see our grandchild, exclaims both my in-laws, putting immense pressure on me. Glancing at John sitting beside me, I can tell he's glaring disapprovingly. It's evident he wants to say, "Don't say unnecessary things." While I share the desire for a child, John insists on building our own home first. It's entirely inappropriate for my in-laws to pressure me to have a child in this situation. Rather than advising John, who doesn't listen to my words at all regarding having children, my in-laws persist in pressuring me. Despite wanting to speak up, I'm silenced by their constant pressure for a grandchild. After the meal, John announces, "I'm going out for a smoke." "You know, Emily, it seems like you're working, but if you want to be a housewife, you should quit your job and work hard to be a good wife. Maybe that's why John isn't paying attention to you." It feels as though I'm being told I can't have children because I'm working, despite my strong desire for children. John is the one not thinking about having them anytime soon. "Just quit your job already," urges my in-law. I retort, "It was John who asked me to work. Why don't you talk to John first before constantly lecturing me?" Expressing my anger, I continue, "When it comes to having children, I want them to. But it's John who stubbornly refuses to listen to me until we have our own home. Instead of nagging at me, why don't you make sure you tell your son the truth? My words leave my in-laws in a state of shock. I excuse myself with a simple apology and leave the table, making my way towards the entrance. The anger within me extended to John, who leisurely smoked by the entrance without saying a word. I climbed into the car, and Annie followed suit, casually remarking, "Hey, are you leaving already?" Knowing he would never disclose the truth to his parents, I grew weary of the various things my in-laws constantly told me. I declared that I wouldn't be visiting my in-laws' house anymore, and John widened his eyes in surprise. "Why not? We can save on food expenses, right? You also want a home soon and children, don't you?" he questioned. Fed up with the continuous impositions from both him and my in-laws, I snapped back, "If it's about saving, I've told you many times that we would save more if you stopped going to drinking parties or smoking instead of driving to your parents' house just to save the cost of one meal. Why don't you save in that way? Everyone needs a break." Expressing my frustration, I continued, "You keep imposing things on me like not using hot water and turning off the lights by 10 p.m. You think we can save money without sacrificing anything. If I have to go through all this trouble alone, then I don't need a home. I'm fed up with this. You never sacrifice anything yourself, but you're okay with imposing it on others." He seemed to downplay the situation, saying, "It's not a big deal." But I countered, "No, it is a big deal. How much patience do you think I've had all this time?" Moreover, I was infuriated by his pretense in front of his parents, making it appear as if I were the reason we couldn't have grandchildren. I'm tired of being the only one asked to have grandchildren. It's not me who doesn't want children. It's John. I've been saying it for a long time. I want children soon, so please stop being so angry. Seeing John struggle to deal with my unusual anger brought a slight sense of satisfaction, but it didn't resolve everything. Unsure of what to do next, I gazed out of the car window, ignoring John. A turning point for us came a month later when one of my relatives, my father's brother, passed away. With several pieces of land, a luxurious mansion, and a lavish lifestyle, my uncle's passing became a revelation for John. "Impressive. I didn't know you had such a remarkable relative," he remarked. A few days later, upon receiving news about my uncle's inheritance, I decided to discuss the details with the lawyer in our apartment. Recognizing that it was a matter exclusively related to me and had no bearing on John, I politely asked him to leave the room, especially since he seemed uneasy about the concept of inheritance. I wanted to spare him any potential trouble that could arise if he got involved. After about 3 hours of listening to the lawyer explain the intricacies of the inheritance, I thanked him and asked him to leave. However, to my surprise, John, who had been at home earlier, was nowhere to be found. Assuming he had probably stepped out to avoid interrupting my conversation with the lawyer, I started preparing dinner. Little did I know, 3 months later, John approached me expressing, "There's something I want to show you," and took me for a drive. Excitement welled up as we entered a residential area, but my confusion grew when the car parked in front of a certain house. John then pressed the intercom, and my in-laws emerged from inside. However, it was evident that this house was not their home. "You finally made it. When are you and Emily moving over here?" "We're thinking of moving in by the end of this month," announced my father-in-law. He continued, blaming me for being a selfish daughter-in-law, and accused me of always shifting the responsibility for having children onto John. I shot a disapproving glare at John, bewildered as to why he brought me here when I had clearly stated I wouldn't visit my in-laws anymore. Searching for an explanation, I questioned him, and he simply shrugged, stating, "Don't get so angry. If we live together, we can bridge the gap between you and my mom. Besides, this will be our new home from now on, so you should cooperate on the children issue as well. His revelation left me in disbelief. I hadn't agreed to living with them, especially after explicitly stating that I wouldn't go to my in-laws' house anymore. The situation was further complicated by the nature of the house, as John disclosed it's a two-family house. My plan was always for us to live with my parents eventually. So what's the problem with living in a two-family house now? He asked. The question lingered in the air as I mulled over the situation. Living in a two-family house seemed to be a significant issue, especially when considering our savings. According to our financial situation, building such a splendid new house was seemingly impossible. I couldn't fathom how John managed it. My dad and I chipped in the money, so our savings are empty. But it's fine, right? John casually mentioned. His nonchalant attitude perplexed me. He continued, I heard your uncle's inheritance was worth $690,000, so if you use that money to repay us for the cost of the two-family house, it should be fine, huh? I was taken aback. The idea that he believed my inheritance should be used to fund the house without my consent baffled me. Even if I were to inherit the money, how I used it should be my decision, not his. Frustrated by my rejection of their proposal, John reached into his bag and pulled out a pre-filled divorce form with his name on it. Your money is our money. If you don't like living together, let's get a divorce, he declared. I took the divorce form from his hand, expressing, Fine, if living together is the alternative, then divorce is the better choice. Firmly placing the divorce form into my bag. I turned my back on him and my in-laws, who looked stunned. Ignoring their reactions, I continued. By the way, I renounced my uncle's inheritance. John froze with a bewildered expression. Without waiting for a response, I took a bus and headed home to our apartment. Upon arrival, I promptly filled in my name on the divorce form, which already had John's name on it. I then submitted the divorce papers and immediately purchased cardboard boxes at a home improvement store to start preparing for the move. Recognizing that I couldn't handle the move alone, I hired a moving company. Fortunately, it turned out that not many moves were happening during this season, allowing for a quick relocation. As I packed for the move, a commotion outside the front door indicated John's return. I had the chain lock on, and I addressed him. Sorry, I had the chain lock on. I don't know what you might do when you're so angry. Besides, I need to finish packing for the move. Could you stay at your parents' house for a few days? I won't accept a divorce, John declared, widening my eyes in surprise. I reminded him, But you handed me the divorce form, didn't you? If you sign the divorce papers, that means you agree to the divorce, you know. Astonished, I questioned whether he truly understood the implications of what he had done. He frowned, appearing frustrated, but quickly changed the subject. Why would you give up on a $690,000 inheritance? Normally, you'd inherit it, he questioned. It seemed he had overheard some details about the inheritance, but hadn't grasped the full story. Likely after learning about the $690,000 inheritance, he had rushed to my in-laws, and they impulsively purchased the two-family house without considering the consequences. I explained the inheritance discussion came to me because there wasn't anyone else to inherit it. My uncle had 3 sons, 2 daughters, a wife, and grandchildren. However, all of them renounced the inheritance, so it ended up coming to me. My uncle did have $690,000, but he had to demolish his mansion, spend a lot on maintaining his land, and had plenty of debt. I realized that renouncing the inheritance was a better choice than inheriting it. John was in disbelief, exclaiming, "No way. So even if you had inherited $690,000, you're saying there wouldn't have been much money left? That's fraud." I explained that the lawyer and I had a proper discussion about it, but someone had eavesdropped and left before hearing the whole story. My words left him speechless, and perhaps he finally realized he was in the wrong. However, I asserted, "It's too late now. You betrayed my trust. We've already filed for divorce, and you and I are no longer a couple. Why are you subtly saying you don't want to divorce now? If you truly didn't want to divorce, you should have followed me right away when I returned, shouldn't you?" I reminded him of the consequences of his actions, emphasizing that his mother's opinion about the divorce didn't change the fact that he and his father had invested in the two-family house. His mother's lack of experience with work didn't allow her to fully appreciate the value of money. I sighed, realizing it wasn't my role to listen to his complaints about his parents. If we were still a married couple, I might have entertained the conversation. However, I reminded him, "You haven't submitted the divorce papers yet, have you?" He pleaded, "If you do it now, we can still be a couple. Please let's live together in that two-family house." "I'd already submitted the divorce papers, so it's pointless now," I replied. His expression slumped in front of the apartment door, appearing bewildered and lost. While I believed he brought this upon himself, I couldn't let him linger outside forever. Briefly considering sending him away, I realized I had no time to waste. So I continued with my preparations for the move. After a while he was gone, and I proceeded with the move, informing my workplace about the divorce, especially since my boss had acted as our mediator. Feeling obligated to apologize for the divorce, I'd also shared the news with my coworkers who had been invited to our wedding. During lunch break, unexpectedly, he burst into my department in front of my coworkers, claiming, "It's absurd that you're talking about the divorce. I wish you hadn't mentioned it." He disclosed the situation in his department, assuming I had inherited an estate and suggested buying a two-family house. When faced with the choice between divorce or living together, I chose divorce. Consequently, he found himself being avoided by everyone. I even received sympathy from colleagues. Eventually, he quit his job. During this time, a male colleague confessed to me, saying, "I've actually liked you for a long time. I hope to build a home where we can communicate as a couple and work things out together."